public while selling so many books, that's one thing. But by their selling books, they are doing the greatest service. What will your 1 hour of preaching do? They will hear and go away. But if they have one book at home, they will read it, their friends will read it, and some solid work is done. So, the art is to sell many books and not to irritate the public. So, you may instruct all the others how to do this successfully. Jai Srila Prabhupada. The following fortunate devotees participated in the pastime and assistant Guru Maharaj in distributing the books today. Tarun Madhusudan Das from Assam to Bhagavad Gita, from Kasadesh devotee have Prabhupada Krishna Das on Bhagavad Gita, Keshav Prem Das on Bhagavad Gita, Charani Javidase and 2 years old daughter on Bhagavad Gita, Toshan Krishna Das, newly initiated 8,000 rupees for Guru Maharaj Seva, Jagadish Malhotra and Veena Malhotra to Bhagavad Gita, 1 each, Mahendra Shivani Nikita and Ritika Bhegal, 3 Bhagavad Gita, 1 each. And Balachandra Channa Mehta Gandhavika Devidasi, Balavanda 2 small book. So Guru Maharaj is distributing 10 more big books, 2 small books, and total of 12 Srila Prabhupada Transcendental books. Srila Prabhupada Transcendental book distribution ki chai. So the Bhadra Purnima campaign started today. Guru Maharaj has very nicely inaugurated. So this is a very wonderful message for all over the world, to all the devotees to sell as many as possible Srimad Bhagavatam sets. And in this way you can save the earth. Distribute Bhagavatam, buy Bhagavatam, sell Bhagavatam. You can put your pledges in our virtual book table and you can pay in monthly installment. So please forward your pledges, all the yatras and all other devotees, the Bhakti Vriksha groups and everybody. Kindly start sending from today. So from tomorrow we will start announcing your pledges. We have to make at least 43,000 Srimad Bhagavatam sets this year. So let's see how much we are all cooperating and doing. Please pass on this wonderful opportunity also of participating in the pastime of Guru Maharaj and distributing Srila Prabhupada books. Even if it is a single Bhagavad Gita or one Srimad Bhagavatam set, or some few small books, do WhatsApp to +91 94 34 76 04 02. Stay tuned for tomorrow's Lord Chaitanya class while you are hearing today's Lord Chaitanya class now. Thank you for your daily prayers with us. Let's pray for the consistent good health of our beloved Guru Maharaj and speedy recovery of Mahavara Prabhu to join back in full swing as soon as possible. And of course, our prayers include for and one important thing for our dear God brother Anadi Jagannath Prabhu in Bangalore. During the service he was doing as devotee care, he left his body, died in the war field. So let's all pray for that. And this prayer also include for those who are celebrating their anniversaries today, for their well-being and Krishna consciousness. Let's pray together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much. I think the outsiders are not hearing.
Please announce the during this month, the Srimad Bhagavatam pledged and distributed.
Every day we should announce.
Yes. Yes, good.
And all need that the Grihasthas, the husband and wife work and the family work as a team.
So, and we need the Grihasthas, the husband and wife, the family work together as a team
to serve Krishna.
To
Read and distribute the Srimad Bhagavatam.
To read and distribute the Srimad Bhagavatam.
To chant Hare Krishna.
And chant Hare Krishna.
Take Krishna Prasad.
And take Krishna Prasad.
Now, us sannyasis and vairagis, we have to help each other.
For us, sannyasis and vairagis, we have to help each other.
Grihasthas have to work husband and wife together.
Grihasthas, they have to work husband and wife together, cooperating.
Haribo.
Haribo.
Guru Maharaj, it's going to rain outside. They're going to stand like this. Not good for them.
You should bring in umbrella here.
Next.
Very nice.
It's the rainy season in India.
This is the rainy season in India.
Rainy season, monsoon means at any time, any day, any night, any time, it may rain.
Monsoon means at any time, any day, any night, any moment you can expect for rain.
So come with umbrella.
Come with
So if you
umbrella.
want to stay dry, bring an umbrella. You've seen many guests coming to my house, they all carry an umbrella.
We have seen many guests coming to Mayapur, they all are carrying their umbrella.
Especially in June, July, August.
Especially in June,
September.
July, August.
Namo Krishna Padaya
Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale
Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami
Itena
Namaste Saraswati Devi
Gauravani Pracharine
Nirviseshasanavadi
Paschatya Desatarine
Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda
Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi
Gaura
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Krishna Krishna
Hare Rama Hare Rama
Rama Rama Hare
Hare Hare Nama Krishna
Yadavaya Namaha
Gopala Govinda Ram
Srimad Sudhanam
Okakaradivachalam
Pango Langayate Girim
Katifataman Bande
Sri Gurum Dinatarinam
Parmananda Madhavam
Sri Chaitanya Mishwaram
Hari Om Tat Sat.
Hari Om Tat Sat. Dear devotees, today we will continue with the compilation of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Today's chapter is entitled compilation of the Chaitanya Leela. Sorry, Good Maharaj. Today's chapter is entitled Everyone Develops Faith in Haridāsa Ṭhākura during his stay in Phuliyā.
Under the section
The Glories of Haridāsa Ṭhākura.
Srila Haridāsa Ṭhākura.
Srila Haridāsa Ṭhākura Jai
Srila Haridāsa
Gaura
Ṭhākura.
Hari
Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat.
Wow, Bhagavad.
Yeah. Wow, Bhagavat. Adi Khanda 16.6.
স্বেচ্ছাময় ভগবানের তখনও নিজ গুপ্তবৃত্ত হরিনাম প্রেম বিতরণ রূপ স্বীয় অবতার হেতু সাঙ্গ কোন প্রেম ভক্তি প্রকাশ নিমিত্ত অবতার তাহা কিছু না করে ইচ্ছা
Lord Chaitanya incarnated to distribute love of Godhead and devotion. By his supreme will, he had not yet begun. Purport by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Ṭhākura Srila Prabhupada. Although Lord Gaur Sundar appeared to distribute loving devotional service to Lord Krishna in his childhood pastime, he did not manifest such devotional service. This is proof of his independent will. His supreme will is absolute and independent. If a living entity, by awakening his subordinate nature, can understand his desire, then the eternally controlled living entity will not longer try to illegitimately dominate him.
So, Lord Ranga, he played his initial pastime as Nimai Pandit.
So Lord Gauranga, he played his initial pastimes as Nimai Pandit.
And thus, the residents of Navadvip are blessed
And thus the residents of Navadvip were blessed
by his association.
by his association.
And his pastimes with Mother Sachi and others Dharma Mitra are very illuminating.
So his pastimes for Mother Sachi, Jagannath Mishra, and others, it was very illuminating. Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat Adikanda, chapter 16.7.
তৎকালীন জগতের দুর্দশা বর্ণনা অতি পরমার্থ শূন্য সকল সংসার তুচ্ছ রস বিষয়ে সে আদর সবার
The entire world was devoid of spiritual practice, for everyone was attached to insignificant sense gratification. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Ṭhākura, Srila Prabhupada. During the time of Lord Gaurasundar, the living entities of this material world were extremely maddened by the insignificant taste of sense objects. Instead of realizing that the only purpose of life was to make spiritual advancement, people were eager for their own sense enjoyment and were averse to the service of Lord Krishna. In fact, the community of sense enjoyers who glorify religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification, and the community of renunciates who aspire for liberation from material existence became completely devoid of devotional service to Lord Krishna. Not even the slightest propensity for serving Lord Krishna could be found in their hearts at any time. One may refer to the purport on the verse 308.
The Srimad Bhagavatam explains how material sense gratification is tucha.
The Srimad Bhagavatam explains how material sense gratification is tucha,
It's very insignificant.
which is very insignificant.
And what Chaitanya wanted to give people the highest bliss, highest ecstasy,
Lord Chaitanya wanted to give the people the highest bliss, highest ecstasy,
and that everyone can practice Bhakti Yoga.
in which anyone can practice Bhakti Yoga.
Whether you are Grihastha, whether you are Vairagi, anyone.
Whether you are a Grihastha or Vairagi, anyone.
This has by rendering devotional service to Krishna and experience such an extreme happiness.
Just by rendering devotional service to Krishna, you can experience such extreme happiness, ecstasy. Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat Adikanda 16.8.
অজ্ঞ রুড়ি গৌণী বৃত্তির আশ্রয়ে গীতা ভাগবতের ভারবাহী পাঠকগণের গ্রন্থ সারস্য কৃষ্ণ কীর্তনে আচারচার ত্যাগ গীতা ভাগবত বা পড়াই যে জন তারাও না বলে না বলা এই কৃষ্ণ সংকীর্তন
Even those who recited or heard Srimad Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam never engaged in the Sankirtan, the congregational chanting of the holy name. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Ṭhākura, Srila Prabhupada. Even if some persons exhibited an attempt to teach Srimad Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, in spite of studying these devotional scriptures, they never engaged in congregational chanting of the holy names. Nor did they realize that such chanting was the only purport of devotional scriptures. Nor did they induce others to engage in congregational chanting, Sankirtan.
So the reading of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam
So the reading of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam
was done in a very dry way.
should be done in a very
Dry way.
dry way.
Dry way.
Dry way.
And they didn't chant Hare Krishna and Sankirtan.
They didn't chant Hare Krishna in Sankirtan.
ISKCON is before every class, we always chant Hare Krishna.
In ISKCON, before every class, we always chant Hare Krishna.
And all our artis or other worship, we always chant Panchatattva Hare Krishna.
For all our artis and worship, we always chant the Panchatattva mantra and Hare Krishna.
But this is the instruction of the Holy Scriptures.
So this is the instructions of all the scriptures.
That in Kali Yuga we should engage in the Sankirtan.
That for Kali Yuga, we should engage in Sankirtan. Shri Chaitanya Bhagavat Adi Khanda 16.9.
চতুর্দিকে দুসঙ্গ দর্শনে ভক্তগণের একাকী নির্জনে নিঃসঙ্গে কৃষ্ণ সংকীর্তন হাতে তালি দিয়া সে সকল ভক্তগণ আপনা আপনি মিলি করে না কীর্তন
The devotees performed kirtan among themselves while simply clapping their hands.
When Lord Chaitanya started the Sankirtan movement,
When Lord Chaitanya started the Sankirtan movement,
he had symbols of Mridanga drums
he had cymbals and mridanga drums,
and encouraged people to dance.
and he asked people to dance. Shri Chaitanya Bhagavat Adi Khanda 16.10.
নিরীহ ভক্তগণের নির্জনের নাম কীর্তনেও পাষণ্ডগণের শব্দ সামান্য বুদ্ধিতে নামের প্রতি উচ্চ বিদ্রোহ উক্তি ও উচ্চ কীর্তন কারণ জিজ্ঞাসা তাহাতে উপহাস করায় সবারে ইহারা কি কার্যে ডাক ছাড়ে উচ্চ স্বরে
Yet people still criticize them by saying, why are they chanting so loudly? Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Ṭhākura Srila Prabhupada. The word dhak is found in local language and means a loud sound made in the mouth, a scream, a call, an utterance, or an address. The word chade, coming from a local corruption of the word sal, which is derived from the Sanskrit word sr plus nik, and the word chada, which comes from the Hindi word chodna, which means to release or to let out. In other words, to release from one's mouth. The phrase jak chade means shouting or making noise. The devotees who chanted the names of Lord Krishna while clapping their hands were ridiculed by the foolish persons who were bewildered by the illusory energy and devoid of chanting the holy names of Lord Krishna. Such persons did not at all understand the purpose of loudly chanting the holy names of Lord Krishna.
Loud chanting of the holy names helps the human listeners and even the plants and insects
So the loud chanting of the holy names helps the human listeners and even the plants and insects
and all the animals.
and all the animals.
So this loud chanting is especially recommended.
So this loud chanting is especially recommended. Chaitanya Bhagavat Adi Khanda 16.11.
নিজেদের মায়াবাদ মূলক ধারণার আস্ফালন আমি ব্রহ্ম আমাতেই বসে নিরঞ্জন দাস প্রভু ভেদ করে কি কারণ
I'm the same.
It's the same. Normally you translate these verses.
Uh, I only also took, well, I was in Brahman.
Okay.
Within me sits the absolute truth.
I am the supreme Brahman. Within me sits the absolute truth.
Why the difference between the servant and master is given here.
Where is the difference? Why the difference between the servant and master is given here? Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Ṭhākura Srila Prabhupada. The word Niranjana refers to one who is without Anjana, material designation born of illusory energy and nescience. One who is devoid of false identification, one who is faultless, one who is spotless, or one who is pure. In the Mundaka Upanishad, it is stated, Tada Vitvan Punya Pape Vidhuya Niranjanaha Paramam Samyam Upaiti. Then that intelligent person transcends both pious and impious activities, becomes free from worldly bondage, and enters the divine abode of the Lord. The phrase Dasa Prabhu Bhed is explained as follows. The transcendental relationship in the form of Prabhu Dasa between the Supreme Brahman, the Almighty, fully conscious Vishnu, the controller of Maya, and the minutely conscious living entities who are controlled by Maya is the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the ripened fruit of the Vedic desire tree, the natural purport on the Brahma Sutras, and the essence of Vedic knowledge of, or the Upanishads, which are the head of Vedas. The following are the few Vedic references regarding phrase Dasa Prabhu Ved. In the Mundaka Upanishad 3.2.3 and the Katha Upanishad 1.2.23, it is stated, Yam evesha vrunute tena labhyas tasyaisha atma vrunute vibrunute tanum swam. The Lord is obtained only by one who he himself chooses. To such person he manifests his own form. Also in the Katha Upanishad 2.1.1 and 4, it is stated, Kaschid dhira pratyak atmanam aikshat avrita chakshur amritatvam icham. With the desire to attain immortality, a sober practitioner sees the Supreme Lord while closing his eyes, and Mahantam Vibhum Atmanam Matvo Dhiro Nasochati. A sober worshipper, after realizing the great all-pervading supersoul, no longer laments. In the Katha Upanishad 2.2.3, it is stated, Madde Vamanam Asinam Vishve Deva Upasate. Sri Vamana Deva is sitting amongst all the demigods who are worshipping him. In the Katha Upanishad 2.2.12 to 13, it is stated, Tam Atmastam ye anupashyanti dhiras tesham sukham shashvatam shanti shashvati netaresham. Only the wise person who can see that supreme soul within his heart becomes peaceful and enjoys transcendental bliss. In the Katha Upanishad 2.3.8, it is stated, Yat jnatva muchyate jantur amritatvam cha gacchati. By knowing him, even the animals attain liberation and become immortal. In the Katha Upanishad, it is 2.3.17, it is stated, Tat vichar chukram amritam. Know for certain that he is pure and immortal. In the Mundaka Upanishads 1.1.4, it is stated Devitye veditavya iti hasma yat brahma vido vadanti para chaiva paracha. There are two kinds of educational systems. One deals with transcendental knowledge, para vidya, and other with material knowledge, apara vidya. In the Mundaka Upanishads 1.2.12 and 13, it says, Tat Vijñātam sa guru eva bigachet. In order to understand the transcendental science, one must approach a bona fide spiritual master. and tasmai sa vitvam upannaya yena aksharam purusham veda satyam pravacha tam tattvato brahma vidyam. The spiritual master properly instructs the surrendered disciple about the absolute truth by which a disciple will understand the inexhaustible Lord. Mundaka Upanishad 2.1.10 states, Etadyo Veda Nihitam Guhayam, so Vidyagrantim Viki Ratiha Saumya. Oh, beautiful one. He who knows the most confidential knowledge of the Supreme Brahman is freed from material bondage born of nescience. Mundaka Upanishad 2.2.7 and 9 state, Vijnanena paripashyanti dhira ananda rupam amritam yat vibhati. By knowledge of absolute truth, the sober practitioners realize that blissful, immortal, all-pervading Supreme Lord. And Hiranmaye pare koshe virajam brahma nishkalam tat chubram jyotisham jyotis tat yat atmo vido viduhu. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Brahman, devoid of any connection with Maya and without any transformation, and he resides in the effulgent supreme abode beyond the material covering. The self-realized souls know him to be the bright illumination of sun. Also, Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.1 to 3, Shvetashvatara Upanishad chapter 4, and Rik Samhita 2.3.17 state, Dvas Suparna Sayuja Sakhaya Samanam Riksham Parishas Prajate Tayorananyam Vipalam Sadvati Anasanam Anyo Abhichakashiti. Two companion birds sit together in the shelter of the same pipala tree. One of them is relishing the taste of the tree's berries, while the other refrains from eating and instead watches over his friend. Samena vrikshe purusho nimagno anishaya sochati muhyamanaha dushtam yada pashyati anyamisham asya mahimanam eti vita shokaha. Although the two birds are in the same tree, the enjoying bird is full of anxiety and morose. But if somehow he turns to his friend the Lord and knows his glories, at once he is freed from all anxiety. Yada pashyate rukma varnam kartaram nisham purusham brahma yonim tada vityam punye pape viduya niranjanaf paramam samyam upaiti. One who realizes the golden form of Lord Gauranga, who is the ultimate actor and the source of the Supreme Brahman, he attained highest knowledge. He transcends both pious and impious activities, becomes free from worldly bondage, and enters the divine abode of the Lord. Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.4 states, Atma Krida Atmarati Kriya Vanesha Brahma Vidam Varishtaha. A practitioner who plays with the same self-sporting Supreme Lord, whose love and attachment is directed towards the Lord, is the topmost knower of Brahman. Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.5 says, Yam Pashyanti Yataya Kshino Doshaha. He whom the faultless renounced practitioners see. Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.8 state, Jnana Prasadena Vishuddha Sattvastu Tam Pashyate Nishkalam Dhyaya Yamanaha. If by the mercy of the spiritual knowledge one meditates on the unchangeable, pure Supreme Lord, he can get darshan of him. Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.9 says, Eshanur Atma Chetasa Veditavyaha. The soul is atomic in size and can be perceived by perfect intelligence. Mundaka Upanishad 3.2.1 says, Upasate Purusham Hi Akamaste Sukram Etam Ati Vartanti Dhiraha. The sober persons who worship the the most pure personality, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, become free from all material desires and liberated from the bondage of Maya. Mundaka Upanishad 3.2.4 states Nayam Atma Bala Hinena Labhyo Eter Upair Yatate Yastu Vidvam Tasyaisha Atma Vishate Brahmadhama. A person devoid of strength and devotional service cannot achieve the Supreme Soul, the Lord. Only one who is eager to practice devotional service through the process of chanting his holy names can enter the supreme abode of the Lord. Mundaka Upanishad 3.2.8 states Tatha Vitvan Nama Rupat Vimuktaparat Param Purusham Upaiti Divyam. At that time, a Vaishnava conversant in the knowledge of the absolute truth becomes free from material names, forms, and attains the transcendental Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. In the Taittiriya Upanishad 2.4, it is stated, Anandam Brahma Vidvan na Viveti Kadachana. After achieving the loving service of the Supreme Lord, a practitioner becomes fearless. Taittiriya 2.5 states, Atmanandamaya Ananda Atma Brahmapucham Pratishta. The Supreme Lord is full of ecstasy. The impersonal Brahman is his bodily effulgence. He is the source of Brahman. Taittiriya Upanishad 2.7.1 states, Yat vai tat sukrutam raso vai saha rasam hi evayam labvavananti bhavati esa hi evanandayati ato so bhayam gato bhavati. When one understands the personality, Supreme Personality of Godhead, the reservoir of pleasure, Lord Shri Krishna, he actually becomes transcendently blissful. He alone is the source of all pleasure. Therefore, by knowing him, one becomes fearless. Abhaya. Taittiriya Upanishad 3.6 states, Anando Brahmeti Vajanad Anandodhi Eva Kilvimani Bhutani Jayante Anandena Jatani Jivanti Anandam Prayanti Abhisa Vishantiti Tat Brahmeti Upasita. By undergoing austerity, he realized the blissful Supreme Brahman from whom all living entities are born, by whom the living entities are maintained, and into whom the living entities enter at the time of annihilation. One should worship him alone. The Chandogya Upanishad states, Om iti etat aksharam udgita mupasita. One should worship with the hymns of Samaveda, the inexhaustible Lord, who is non-different from Omkara. Chandogya Upanishad 3.14 states, Sarvam kalam vidam brahma tat jalanti shanta upashita. Whatever we see is a manifestation of Brahman. Everything is created, maintained, and annihilated by Brahman. Therefore, one should peacefully worship him. In the Chandogya Upanishad 4.9, it is stated, Achadhi eva vidya acharyadyeva vidya vidita sadishtam prapayati iti. One should learn devotional service from an acharya and worship the Lord, then he will certainly attain his goal of life. Chandogya 6.8.16 states, Sa Atma Tattvam Asi Shvetaketo iti. You are that soul, O Shvetaketu. Chandogya Upanishad 6.14 state, Acharyavan Purusho Veda. One who approaches a bona fide spiritual master can understand everything about spiritual realization. Chandogya Upanishad 7.25 said, Atmai Vedam Sarvamiti Sava Esha Evan Pasyan Nevam Manvan Evam Vijanam Atma Ratir Atma Krida Atma Mituna Atma Nandaha Swarat Bhavati. A practitioner who knows that this entire world is a form of the Supreme Soul, the Lord, who is self-satisfied, self-sporting, and engaged in enjoying pastimes with his associates, thus lives with the Lord as a distinct entity. Such person then attain loving service to the Lord and loving service to the Supreme Lord and becomes freed from material bondage. Chandogya Upanishad 8.3 states, Atha ya esha samprasado asmat charirat samuthaya param jyoti rupa sampatyasvarena rupena bhinisphatyata esha atmati hova chaitat amritam vayam etat brahmeti tasya hava etasya brahmano nama satyam niti. Then the liberated soul who has achieved the causeless mercy of the Lord leaves his body and attains the supreme effulgent Lord. He is then reinstated in his constitutional position as a servant of the Supreme Lord. He then reaches the conclusion that the Lord is the immortal, fearless, and almighty Supreme Soul. Chandogya Upanishad 8.12 states, Sa Uttama Purusha Satatra Paryeti Jakshat Kridam Ramamanaha Tam Va Etam Deva Atmanam Upasate. The topmost person is he who achieves the Supreme Lord through devotional service. He enjoys food and sports in the abode of the Lord. The demigods worship that Supreme Lord.
The Chandogya Upanishad 8.13 also states, Shyam Chavalam Prapadye Savalakchayamam Prapadye Viduya Papam Dutva Shariram Kratam Kratatma Brahma Lokam Abhisambhavamiti. For receiving the mercy of Krishna, I surrendered unto his energy Radha. And for receiving the mercy of his energy, I surrender unto Krishna. By worshipping them, a practitioner becomes free from all sinful reactions and, being fully satisfied, he goes to the eternal abode of the Lord. The Haridāsa Upanishad 1.4 states, Atmanam eva priyam upasita. One should worship the Supreme Lord, who is most dear to everyone. Haridāsa 2.1 states, Maitasmin Samvadista Indro Vaikunto Parijata Senativa Aham Yetam Upasayiti. Do not argue on the topic. I worship that Lord Hari, who is full of 6 opulences, who resides in Vaikunta and whose associates are unconquerable.
Haridāsa further states, Yatagme Kshudra Vipu Vishpulinga Vicharanti Evam Evasmat Atmana Sarve Prana Sarve Loka Sarve Deva Sarvani Bhutani Vicharanti Tasyopanishad Satyasya Satyam Miti. Just as small sparks emanate from a big fire, similarly all living entities, all planets, all the demigods, and all material elements such as earth emanate from the Supreme Soul, the Supreme Lord, Sri Govinda. His instructions are the supreme truth. Brihadaranyaka 3.8 states, Ya etat aksharam gargi viditvasman lokat praiti sa brahmanaha. O Gargi, one who is acquainted with that infallible truth by which one transcends death is a Brahmana. Brihadaranyaka 4.4 state, Brahmaiva san brahapyeti tam etam vedanu vachanena brahmana vividi shanti. He becomes as good as Brahman and attains Brahman. The Brahmanas can understand this supreme Brahman, the Lord, through the Vedas. Brihadaranyaka 4.5 states, Atma va are Drishtavyo, Shotavyo, Mantavyo, Nididhyasitavya. O Maitreyi, one should constantly follow, see, hear, and remember the Supreme Soul, the Supreme Lord Govinda. Brihadaranyaka 5.5 states, Te Deva Satyam Evopasate Tat Etat Tri Aksharam Satyamiti. The demigod worship the absolute truth. Therefore, the 3 syllables Sa, Ti, are the eternal truth, Satyam. The Shvetashvara Upanishad 1.7, it is stated, Brahma Vido Viditva Lina Brahmani Tatpara Yoni Muktaha. Knowing that this Supreme Brahman is beyond material creation, the knowers of Brahman become inclined towards him, and as a result of serving him, they become free from the five types of misery, living within the womb, taking birth, becoming diseased, growing old, and dying. Shvetashvara Upanishad 1.8 states, Bhoktru Bhavat Jnatva Deva Muchyate Sarva Pashaihi. If one understands the Supreme Lord, in other words, if one worships him with full knowledge, then he becomes freed from all bondage. Guru Maharaj, you should read everything.
All I want.
How much more?
This will be the larger one than this.
তাৎপর্য কতটা বড় আছে গুরুমন্ত্রী?
How long? Luckily, this is not in our BBT books.
This will be the last sloka for the day, Guru Maharaj.
Read the last paragraph. Okay. The Brahma Sutra 2.3.50 state, Abhasa Evacha. Both the living entities and the incarnation such as Matsya have been described as amshas or parts. Yet the opponents attempt to establish equality between the incarnation of the Lord and the living entities with the argument that both are parts of the Supreme Lord is simply a reflection of the truth and is contaminated by fault of Sat Pratipaksha or honest opposition. The incarnations such as Matsya are parts because they have been invested with partial potencies, whereas the living entities are parts because they are localized and minute in quantity. There are innumerable such as Vedic statements and sutras that describe the relationship between Dasa and Prabhu, or between the living entities and Vishnu. The proud scholars who were envious of the Vaishnavas and who ridiculed the process of chanting the holy names of Krishna used to say, the living entity is the Supreme Brahman. In other words, there is no difference between the living entity and the Supreme Brahman. Therefore, we find no reasons for the Vaishnavas to consider that Vishnu is the master and the living entities are his eternal servants. Due to such persons' material considerations and conceptions, they thought that the relationship of master and servant between Lord Vishnu and the living entity Jivas is certainly abominable, contaminated by the modes and temporary.
This verse of Chaitanya Bhagavat
This verse of Chaitanya Bhagavat
states that the materialists consider Prabhu and Das, master and servant, be the same.
The materialists consider Prabhu and Das, the master and servant, to be the same.
So then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada Thakur,
So then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada Ṭhākura,
he gave so many quotes
he gave so many quotes
which state the difference between Prabhu and Das.
which states the difference between Prabhu and Das.
I mean, I cut it short. You know that half hour, you know, all the quotes.
We cut it short. If you would have read, it would have been half an hour.
I mean,
Or
it's so many quotes
it's so many quotes
that it shows that the people who are saying that Vishnu and the servants are the same,
it shows to the people, those who are saying Vishnu and the servants are the same,
that they're speaking against established Vedic evidences.
They are speaking against established Vedic evidences.
I mean, many quotes.
I mean, many quotes.
You one Upanishad 4 or 5 times, another Upanishad 4 or 5 times.
He gives one Upanishad 4 or 5 times, another Upanishad 4 or 5 times.
So there's plenty of evidence that the Supreme Lord exists before the material creation.
So there is plenty of evidences that the Supreme Lord exists before the creation.
So the expansion of the Supreme Lord, the material entities are manifested.
The expansion of the Supreme Lord, the living entities are manifested.
They stay for some time,
They stay for some time
and then they're put back in the Lord.
and they are put back into the Lord.
The Lord exists before the material creation,
The Lord exists before the material creation,
doing it,
during it,
after it.
and after it.
He always exists.
He always exists.
But we are sometimes manifested, sometimes not.
We are sometime manifested and sometime not.
But if we engage in devotional service,
But if we engage in devotional service,
if we awaken our dormant love for Krishna,
if we awaken our dormant love for Krishna,
we can go back to Krishna.
we can go back to Krishna.
We don't have to be in this material condition life.
We don't have to be in this material conditioned life.
And so I mean, Haridāsa Ṭhākura, he's a great scholar.
Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Ṭhākura is a great scholar.
He made so many references
So he made so many references
that it's very clear that the Vedas are saying that Vishnu is Supreme Lord and we are his minute particle.
It's very clear that the Vedas are saying the Vishnu is the Supreme Lord and we are his minute particles.
So it would help that all the devotees
So we hope that all these devotees
would take the instructions of Lord Chaitanya,
will take the instructions of Lord Chaitanya,
chant Hare Krishna,
chant Hare Krishna,
read Srimad Bhagavatam Gita,
read Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita,
and feast on Krishna Prasad.
and feast on Krishna Prasad.
Gauranga.
Isn't it so simple?
It's so simple when you have a spiritual message.
Yeah. Okay.
We have devotees from Islam.
Thus ends the part 1 of the chapter entitled Everyone Develops Faith in Haridāsa Ṭhākura during his stay in Phuliyā. Okay, to be continued tomorrow. Under the section The Glories of Srila Haridāsa Ṭhākura.
Tomorrow I have the MEB meeting and the Latin American RGB
So tomorrow I have the MEB meetings, Latin American RGB meeting,
and then class.
and then class.
If I don't MEB, you want the class earlier or later?
If there is no MEB, you want the class to be earlier or later?
I don't understand. So
Guru Maharaj, all of them, they go for Mangalarti, so better to have earlier.
No, but Guru Maharaj has a different appointment.
He's asking.
earlier class. What? Who wants it later?
Who wants it later?
All right.
Okay. Okay, Guru Maharaj, only 2 is there. Yeah. Guru Maharaj has to go to the bed early, so you all have to support that as well. Okay.
No, bring your umbrellas.
Okay, you all should bring your umbrellas. No umbrellas, no, will not allow you all inside.
What?
Or they'll get wet.
Yeah, allowed, but we will get it. Yeah.
Okay, happy birthday. What is this? Hari Bol, Rishi Rawat Mataji, Hari Krishna, happy birthday. Good man is blessing you, Krishna Matirastu, Hari Bol. Oh, Rati Rupa Janava Mataji from Gauranga Desh Yatra. Rati Rupini Janava Mataji from Gauranga Desh Yatra, Hari Bol. Long time no see. Hare Krishna, Hari Bol. Okay. Vijay Sridevi Mataji, have to switch on your video, otherwise no darshan.
Hello.
Haribo. Ishvara Sutapa Shambhu from Kolkata, Haribol. Ishwar Vishwambar Prabhu, Hare Krishna, কোথায় আছেন?
Their own devotees all, they want to, their own.
Okay.
Ishara's house.
Ishvara's house. no?
Ishara.
Oh, Ishara's. Haribol. Hare Krishna. How was your journey, Ishwar Vishwambar? Oh, Prabhu, Guru Maharaj, our Daresh Prabhu.
Naresh and Ishwar Vishwambar is in the Ishara's house.
Okay.
Their house is very nearby to airport, a good transit, Guru Maharaj.
Why?
They are all sheltered in Patna. They came to Patna to take shelter from you.
Okay, blessings to all of you. Thank you very much.
Why at 6:30 tomorrow morning?
Yes, good man.
Better get up early.
Okay, better to get up early. Go to bed early, wake up early. Ish.
Wow, look at all those hands.
Yeah, Guru Maharaj. Yeah. Gallery view only. Okay, we are late, Guru Maharaj. Vijay Rao Prabhu, we are seeing you after such a long time. Okay. Harsh Prabhu from Ujjain, Bhopal, how are you? Mancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Krishna Mantir Astu.
Krishne matirastu.
Krishna Mantir Astu.
Krishne matirastu. Haribo. Radha Goloknath Prabhu.
Wait, 5 o'clock, 5:15 tomorrow.
What's 5:15 what?
Class.
5:15 tomorrow the class will be.
Evening, 5:15.
Evening 5:15, yeah.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Okay.